Boruto TBV Vortex Chapter 31 poses an important question. What are you willing to lose to save the future? Because after Inojin is surrounded by Mamushi in Kobu's body, he wrestles with his own morality. If he decides to discard someone like Kobu, then there's no meaning to becoming a ninja. And even Boruto himself questions his choice to save Kobu. Does maintaining his own morality hold more value than the lives of all the people on the planet? It is an important question. I mean, even Sarada has to come to terms with this in a different way. She's willing to put her body on the line and even go blind, but is she willing to make the ultimate sacrifice? If she has to choose between saving her father and saving the planet, what will she do? That is what this is all leading up to, and Koji's laying the groundwork in this very chapter. So we have a lot to discuss, but of course, let's start from the top. Now the chapter opens with the situation between Mamushi and Kobu. Inojin doesn't want to leave his body because he's just a civilian, he's going to die. Koji informs him that if he doesn't leave, he's going to die as well, as long as he's inside Kobu's body when he perishes. Inojin says that he knows this, but he can't bring himself to do it. Instead, he tells Koji to shut up and then informs him of his ninja way. If he can't protect someone like this in this situation, then there'd be no meaning to becoming a ninja. So his entire philosophy is very similar to Naruto in that sense. He wants to protect the people around him. He's that kind of ninja. But of course, Koji, who's also a ninja, sees the world differently. Everything is a means to an end. If he's able to justify leaving someone to die, then he has no problem doing it. And in this situation where it's literally the end of the world, that more so bolsters his resolve. So we have a clash of ideals at this point in time, and Inojin is willing to put his own life on the line to defend his, to the point of taking a beating from Mamushi and even dodging him a couple times, which is very funny, and I'm sure some people use this to, drastically upscale these characters. Kobu is now Ishiki level, and I made this joke in the spoilers, and I'm always gonna make this joke because people need to calm down with these scaling stuff. It's just hilarious at this point. I will say that if you want this to make sense, it's simply that Mamushi's intelligence is now very low since he's now divided in over 200 clones based on what's said in this chapter. So he's not taking Kobu seriously, he's playing with his food. And you can see that based on his own dialogue in the chapter. Though he did end up lighting Kobu on fire, and that's when Boruto came in, swooping in from the sky and absolutely destroying the Mamushis with one swing of his sword. Just 7 of them dead instantly. And he also then used the karma seal to absorb the fire from Kobu's body, similar to what Momoshiki did back in part 1 to save Kawaki. By the way, Shikamaru and Sai are both on the roof when this happened, because they had a conversation prior to this where Sai kinda confronted Shikamaru about what's going on with Inojin, and Shikamaru wouldn't budge. And I know some people might be confused about this, but remember, the more people know about the future, or why they know about the future, messes with the future. So Shikamaru probably wants to tell Sai about it and give him all the details, but it just wouldn't make sense for him to do that because it messes with the entire plan. So he just tells him that, look, we have to make choices that protects the civilians, even if it comes at the detriment of our own children. We are shinobi first. And it seems like Sai kinda understood this because he closed his eyes and he thought about it, and then he opened his eyes and said, okay, cool. This is similar to the mission that you did in the sun, the secret mission. What do you want me to do? Or what do you need from me? So it does seem like Sai's now on Team Save the World. Now for a bit of context, and in hindsight I probably should have done this before, but before they got to the roof, Koji was able to forcefully eject Inojin from Kobu's body by simply snapping his fingers in front of him. I'm not sure if this was always the case or if Koji just learned a new trick and Inojin didn't think that was possible. He does seem a bit surprised, but not to that extent. So maybe it's more so like surprised that Koji knew that he could do that and not that it could be done. So maybe we'll get some more insights on that. Unlikely, but maybe. Now that is when Inojin then reconnected to the mind transfer formation jutsu and contacted Shikamaru and told him that Kobu was in danger. So that is how they knew to go to the roof. And I will say that this entire sequence is just so funny to me because Sai goes to the roof, and as they open the door, it's Kobu being fried alive by Mamushi. And then Boruto appears out of nowhere, and you can see the surprise on Sai's face. Like, this guy is a criminal, by the way. In the eyes of everyone else, he killed the Hokage. So you can just imagine what's in Sai's mind at this point in time. And he's totally justified in his reaction or anything he does after this, because I don't think people realize what we're asking these characters to do. These guys believe that this dude came into the village, he was given everything by Naruto, protected, safe from Mishiki and all that stuff, and then he turned around and killed Naruto and plunged the village into chaos and mourning. Like, I don't think people really put it together what these people feel towards Boruto. Like, yeah, we know that this is Boruto, but they don't believe that. Try to put yourself in their situation. They're being asked to work with a criminal who killed not just their friend, but the Hokage of their village and destabilized this family. I don't think people really try to understand why they would have that hatred towards him. And that is why you have people rooting for Kobu to die, because they see him as, working against Boruto, but in the eyes of Kobu and everyone else, they're working against someone who literally killed Naruto, the Hokage. They don't know that Boruto is innocent. So they have every right to question the Hokage for working with the criminal who killed the prior Hokage. It's like someone doing a coup and then taking over the village after enlisting someone to kill the Hokage. That's the perspective they have. So I just want people to try to understand that Kobu isn't evil. He's not a bad guy. He's doing the right thing. But alas, Boruto did save Kobu here, and Shikamaru tried to use it as a way to wiggle his way out of the entire situation with the interrogation and what's going on with the political structure and all that stuff. But Kobu doesn't seem like he's going to budge, because he does say that Shikamaru can go on and do his job as the Hokage, but the interrogation is not over. Listen well. Don't think I'll leave this unsettled. Once everything is brought to light, we of the Land of Fire will respond accordingly. Mark my words. And this part is really interesting to me, because after Sai takes Kobu back to the infirmary to see if he's okay and all that stuff, we have Boruto having a conversation with Koji, and he poses an important question. Was all this a coincidence, or did you know I'd save Kobu? And Koji says it was one solution, but he still believes that Kobu must die. That is still his opinion. So in essence, what this means is that Koji saw multiple future. One where Kobu is killed, and that is the best possible future in his eyes, and then one where Boruto saves him, and maybe that kinda gives them some time, or maybe Kobu comes around. But based on Kobu's own dialogue here, he's gonna give them time, but he's not changing his view on Boruto. He still sees him as a criminal, he still sees Shikamaru working with Boruto as a big problem, and this chapter, this event, confirmed it, that Boruto is working with Shikamaru. He saw them having a conversation after the entire ordeal. And this entire thing is about to blow up, because not only is he working with Boruto, he deliberately put Kobu's life in danger. Because at some point, they have to explain how Kobu just abracadabra disappeared from the room and then appeared on the roof in front of the enemy. Obviously, they had something to do with that. So they put him in danger to set up a situation where they have to save him. That doesn't prove their innocence. If I was Kobu, this would give me more fuel to take them down, because they actively put me in danger to prove a point. So I'm very interested to see how this entire thing plays out, because even Boruto in this instance is considering what Koji is saying about Kobu needing to die, because he knows that this spells trouble. So, we'll see. Now, separate from this entire political stuff, we also have Sarada versus Mamushi, because apparently the Mamushi is going crazy since they can't find Ada anywhere in the village. And it's important to note that it seems as if they're waiting for Ada to use the Senringan, because for some reason, the Bug Shinju is able to perceive Ada's environment when she uses the Senringan to perceive him. And Ada kinda figured this was the case, so she's not using the Senringan. So Mamushi's kinda going crazy, he's waiting for her to just peek at one of his clones, but it's just not happening. So the clones are pretty much going crazy and starting to attack each other because they're growing impatient. This then led to one of them trying to attack a civilian, and that's when Sarada stepped in with her Mangekyo Sharingan, levitating and all that lovely stuff, and she pretty much pulled multiple Mamushi clones into one of the spheres and had it collapse on them, the same gravity stuff that she used on Mamushi. Now there's also the case that she can't target the people that she can't see, so we have Delta finally getting some shine. She goes after the ones that weren't affected, easily one-shotting them with a simple kick using her destruction beams and pretty much all of the attacks that she used versus Naruto. So Delta is pretty powerful and has shown the ability to handle these Mamushi clones, which isn't surprising because even in this very same chapter we have Team 10 with Chocho easily punching off the head of one of the Mamushis. So Chocho is apparently very powerful, or the Mamushi clones are not that strong. Some believe that Mamushi is above Jigen level, some believe that he's above Ishiki level. Who knows? Based on where you think these characters scale, then you can upscale Chocho from there, I guess. I'll leave that to you guys. I will not opine on this topic. Now, I'm sure you guys know this already, but Sarada is having some side effects after destroying the Mamushis. She's starting to go blind, which is the typical route of any Uchiha who spams their Mangekyo ability. I will say that this is around the second time she has used it, so she's not necessarily spamming it, but I will say that she's also using it to a greater extent, trying to destroy multiple enemies at the same time and also very strong combatants. So maybe it's not just about spamming the ability multiple times, but also the extent to which the user does use it when they use the ability. And there's also the fact that Sarada is a half-breed. I think people tend to forget this, but Sarada isn't a full Uchiha, and half-breeds tend to have stamina issues when it comes to using the Sharingan. So you can imagine the stamina issue they would possess from using the Mangekyo. So that's what we're seeing here now. Sarada is pretty much on a fast track to losing her sight because she isn't a full Uchiha. At this point, the best they can do is give her some Hashirama cells because they have that enhancement vitality about it that enhances one's longevity, which I assume also affects the longevity of their dojutsu, which is why Obito was able to use his dojutsu for over a decade without going blind because he had Hashirama cells inside him. Aside from this, the next option would be to take Hidari's eyes because that transfer of the Mangekyo to awaken the eternal Mangekyo can happen between parent and child. It doesn't have to be siblings. So maybe they find a way to do that, or they use some kind of science mumbo jumbo. I would say that everyone is saying that the Byakugo seal is going to do it, but that doesn't make sense since the Byakugo seal doesn't heal. I think there's a big misconception about the Byakugo seal and the 100 healings jutsu. Those are two different things. All that seal does is simply store chakra for the user to extract and use later on. So the user of the Byakugo can then extract that chakra to then use to heal their body using the 100 healings jutsu, which requires a lot of chakra. So they work in tandem, but the 100 healings doesn't require the Byakugo seal, and the Byakugo seal doesn't require 100 healings. There are two different jutsus that are used in tandem with one another. Now, it's also the case that if Sarada does have 100 healings, which is a separate jutsu, that wouldn't help the Mangekyo, because all that jutsu does is divide your cells to replace the missing ones. So that's how the user is able to replace like missing limbs and missing body parts. That is all it does. Now, when it comes to the Mangekyo, there's no missing cells to replace. There's nothing wrong physically with your eyes. That is why a blood relative, like in the case of Sasuke taking Itachi's eyes that were partially blind, doesn't have any issues using them because it's more so a spiritual issue. The light in the eyes themselves simply becomes sealed after some time, and the only way to unseal them is to awaken the eternal Mangekyo by taking the eyes of your sibling or child. Now, Hashirama cells likely extends the period of use until the eyes are sealed, so that is why Obito didn't go blind. He likely would have gone blind if he continued to use his eyes for maybe a few more years, but that is just my theory. I'm sure they'll find some way to fix this for Sarada. Who knows, maybe Shibai cells is the new Deus Ex Machina. We'll see. Now this chapter ends with Shikamaru moving to Plan B, which is to have the Mamushis directed towards Ada. So the entire plan is to group them into one position, then take them out with a big blast. Maybe Kawaki uses the big, karma wave, or Boruto uses a giant Rasengan, or Sarada uses the gravity sphere. They have multiple options, but I get the idea here. Now, Daemon seems to be very happy because he wants to fight. Though Ada is kinda, iffy on the situation, which is very understandable, If something goes wrong, she's gone. So, we can see why this wouldn't be a plan she would subscribe to. But I'm happy, of course, because we're finally gonna see Daemon step onto the battlefield, and we're gonna see his weaknesses, because Daemon isn't winning this fight easily, if at all, because it just wouldn't make sense, narratively speaking. So I'm looking forward to how Mamushi bypasses the reflection ability, because it's gonna help us when it comes to, some long-standing power scaling issues. So yeah, we'll see. With that said, that's the end of this video. If you guys liked it, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe. And also consider becoming a member to enjoy the members only content and support the channel. But yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.